One of my favourite elements of any FM save is getting a young player in the academy and being able to nurture them until they become a complete and utter monster. There's nothing better than seeing those 5 stars on their player profile and the word elite prospect written next to them. And this season, we were given the chance to do exactly that. We have easily the biggest transfer window of the entire save lined up right now over on stream. We're playing the classics as far as scouting, as well as starting the engine on Team Report scouting for the first time in the save, which means Wonder Kids galore. So join us over there after you've caught up with all the goodness from Season 4 over here. Also, apologies for the lack of YouTube content that's been uploaded in January. I've been ill for the last couple of weeks, which has really not helped. But in addition, I'm working on some slightly larger story-driven projects, which, as you can imagine, take a bit of time to put together, but I do have some smaller stuff coming out very soon. So don't worry, I've not gone anywhere again. And what I've also been doing, which I haven't really talked about much over here, is that last year I joined as a permanent host on the FM Show podcast, which I will put a link to in the description. We do podcast every single week. And yeah, it's really, really fun. So if you haven't already checked that out, please do so now. Now, a little peek behind the curtain, this is the second time I've recorded this video. I spent 3 hours yesterday recording this entire video, only for there to be no audio on it. Did I cry? Maybe. But we're back for take 2, and as we all know, historically, sequels are always better, right? So coming into Season 4 of Building a Nation with Wisła Kraków, we were hoping for an easier time. The last 2 years, we've won the title in dramatic final day circumstances, which has done no end of damage to my blood pressure. This year, I wanted a nice, easy domestic season so we could focus on Europe, try and get back in the Champions League again, and just actually have a bit of relaxation time. But that's the thing about hope. It rarely pans out that way, and what unfolded instead was yet another wild ride of a roller coaster. So buckle up, grab a drink, keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times, and let's get going. Though first, I want to highlight, like I have been doing, like 5 players from our squad from the previous season that you're going to see a lot more of this year, and ones to keep an eye on, I suppose. That way you get an eye of how certain players are developing throughout the save, rather than only being shown new players joining the club, especially in saves like this, where we're signing 80 players a season, and you only see about 20 of those as well. First of 2 is our wonderfully grey-bearded 18-year-old Luis Eduardo. He's seen some things, but what he's mostly seen lately is action on the pitch, and frankly, I love this man so much, and he is definitely one to keep an eye on in Season 4. It wouldn't be one of these little check-ins without me showing Jakub Krzyżanowski, because despite being only 22, he has been probably the most important player of this entire save, and in Season 4 it would be absolutely no different. Then there's Alexander Furman. After his broken ankle last year and somewhat truncated season, this year had to be a bounce-back season for him, and he's proven many things this year. I won't tell you what they are. Then there's Mariusz Stoyer, the 19-year-old Spaniard/Moldovan, is another player that has very much emerged into a huge character this season. Now, don't worry, the stats you're seeing here are from the beginning of the season, not the end, so there's no spoilers on here. These guys definitely do have a lot of impacts, but they've certainly all become incredible characters in the save, Stoyer especially. And lastly, there's Anwar Naeem, the signing from Las Palmas, the right wing back extraordinaire who we just hoped could be fantastic. And if you remember the analysis from last year, we realized he was averaging, nearly 7 dribbles per 90 minutes compared to a lot of other players in those positions that were getting sort of 3.5, nearly double. Does that output continue? Now, I normally like to mention tactical changes up front as well at this point, and largely the tactics that we went into this season were indeed the same as last year. However, there was a big tactical shift midway through the season, which I'll talk about more when we get there. But what I will tell you now, if you're interested, is that I have put the latest version of both tactics. So if you want to download that and have a go, you can do, but I'll explain exactly what's changed and why a little bit later in the video when we come to that narratively. Right, that's enough setup. Let's actually tell the story of Season 4 of Building a Nation. Because when you think of poor ways to start the season, this is probably what you'd have in mind. 3 players out with injuries before we'd even got going. Dario Grujic, partially torn Achilles, out for 3 months. And realistically, that means we're not going to see him before probably November-ish, because you know how the game always underestimates their actual injury length, and they seem to be back a lot later than it says. Even worse was Santiago Kubijin, who ruptured a thigh muscle and will also be out for another 3 months from the point that we're seeing it right now, which again is mid-October, more likely November. And a fractured arm for Joseph Inko-Taria, our Austrian shutdown wingback, and I was really hoping to get him some football this year because he does provide something that the others don't, the ability to defend. Looks like we'll do without that this year, eh? So with the impending arrival of the Super Cup and our first league game not that far away, we needed to make some transfers in, but also to get rid of a bit of deadwood first. First was forgotten man Facundo Mura joining Al Ueda for 1.4 million. Not bad piece of business for us, as it was allowing us to plough some money elsewhere. Not that we needed it, because a reminder, we had a £20 million transfer budget at this stage. And I did have some questions about the finances situation in Poland. Just to clarify, no, we didn't touch anything in the editor to do with the finances. Poland has a £5 million a year TV deal and some reasonable prize money once you're actually in the top flight, which helps. helps. But what's really helped us over the last year was the Champions League qualification for a start, and a couple of larger sales that we were able to cash in, particularly as I don't spend a huge amount of overall money on players, I just sign a lot of them. Our other main out though was Viktor Pashkovsky, a player that frankly we knew was trouble when he walked in. Shame on me. No, come on. This is why I have a script normally, so I don't say things like that off the cuff. Point being, we ended up making a profit. £1.8 million was the sale price in the end, and I think that's a good deal for us because he was just kicking up fuss. So now we've had injuries and exoduses. Great name for a metal band, not useful for us. So naturally the first thing I did was spend 130 grand on Regan Booty from Barrow, because it wouldn't be one of my saves if I didn't sign Regan Booty. So welcome to the club, Regan. How did I convince him? Come for the pierogi, stay for the coefficient points. A much better signing was that of Anthony Bess from Bordeaux. They may have been relegated down the French leagues, but their quality still remains, and much like the wine they produce, what a vintage it was in 2010 when Anthony Bess and his compatriots came along. He's a very, very solid striker. He's got reasonable physicals, maybe a little bit low on those, but he's still very young. Good mentals, decent technical ability. We really liked him, and frankly, mostly signed him because Paris Saint-Germain were interested. He chose to join us instead. However, I'm still unsure how much football he'll get this season. Next through the door was a genuine worldie, for me at least. Abu Coffey. £220,000, or was it 190? It was around about 200k from who else but ASEC Mimosas. If you're not already scouting them, you should be. But point being, he's a physical machine. He's brilliant in every area for that. Crossing is good, dribbling is good as well. The only thing he lets himself down in is that 9 tackling. He's very much a forward-thinking player, isn't going to do much on the backtrack, but for that kind of price, he just gave us so much depth there. And then there was Ecuadorian number 10, Jonathan Mosquera from Real Oviedo for £120,000. He again lacks a little bit of the physicals, but technically his passing and technique and all these things, he's more of a creative player for that number 10 dropping back role than he is a pure finisher, but I feel like it's good to have that dichotomy available with your sort of the Stoyers and your Kuzemkas offset by the likes of Jonathan Mosquera and people like him. So with our first few signings over the line, we approached the Super Cup with great hopes. We needn't have though, as debutant Coffey got absolutely roasted to allow room for a cross, which Romsos greatly accepted at the back post. Less than a minute later, they double their lead as our right back spot proved to be an endless source of joy. The quick-fire double seemed to spark us into life as Booty, of all people, set up Krzyzanowski cross, which allowed Stoyer to smash home and give us hope. It faded as fast as it came when Coffey's afternoon of optional defending allowed space for another dangerous cross. The second half was no better for us as Rajovic's deflected shot scurried under Docampo to put the icing on a miserable cake made of poo. Never liked the Super Cup anyway. Useless competition. Don't care. It was especially galling though that playing at wingback in this game was one of the Patreon regens. For those of you unaware, people on the Patreon get a regen that is added at the start of the save, and they can gen at any club they like or whatever. He gen at Liverpool, and now he's somehow haunting us in Poland after only 4 seasons. So cheers, Andrew. So it was back to the drawing board in terms of signings, and a mistake, frankly. Adel Jabbar looks okay on paper. Again, can't tackle. I have a propensity for wingbacks that can't tackle to save their lives. But for 190 grand, not a bad option really. Yeah, the only problem with him is the enormous wage and the squad player status, which frankly just means he's going to be this season's Spashowski. So expect him to leave sooner rather than later because he's not going to start games. But finally, some delicious news. Uri Kukonda, an actual Belgian amateur player from Belgium that is genuinely excellent. He surprised us, frankly. He's got physicals for days. He can finish very low on composure, but it's so easy to fix. We are very excited about what Uri could be for this team. Even just as a rotation option behind the likes of Alexander Foreman and people like that, he gives us a little bit of extra depth there, and he could definitely get some game time this season. Hopefully lots. But that was genuinely all we could do going into our first league game of the season. Not great, as we prayed that a title clash on the opening day wouldn't be too much for our, as yet, still incredibly unfit team. Players missing on international duty certainly wouldn't help, including David Docampo. For most of the game, we were dominated in chances while controlling all of the ball, but the defence held firm. At half-time, I reverted to our old tactical style to see if stretching the pitch could wake us up. Then, in the 83rd minute, we got our reward as Naeem linked up with the new boy Kukonda off the bench, who was able to lash home a powerful effort after popping up in the box. They threw more bodies forward, chances on the counter appeared, and Kukonda latched onto the end of a lovely through ball. But the Belgian still wasn't done as he combined with Naeem again to put a goal on a plate for Katala to score his first of the year and leave Lech Poznan seeing stars. Truly one of the ultimate super sub performances from new man Uri Kukonda. Maybe he has more of a role than we thought. But that brought more bad news, unfortunately, as we had more injuries. Adrian Castillo, the forgotten man, he just can't stay fit. He's pretty much spent the last 2 years being solely injured. The first of whom was Wolfgang Kunze. Great name. Wolfgang's just always a powerful name. £91,000 from Chemnitzer. We have really found a lot of joy using transfer room in requests and looking especially, not that you can filter this, but just finding them in the German 3rd tier or below. There is some talent. Then an even better signing, Jude Hasmir, 3.9k from Stuttgart Kickers. Like, will he play for us much this season? Possibly not, just because we've got such a solid back 3 lineup. But still, for the future, these kind of guys are such bargains. And literally from the exact same club, 6.5 grand, Luca Victor Krause, another centre-back. We basically took their centre-back pairing. I kind of feel bad for them in a way, but they're both here, they're both great. But it was also time to say goodbye to a player in that of Robert Navarro. I may not have even showed you him last season. He was a player that we weren't even particularly fond of. I don't think he even had 5-star PA at the time in the history of players coming through. Bayern bid 7 million for him, and we don't know why. I guess they were just desperate for a goalkeeper, but they had Urbig, they've got Nubel, they've got Neuer still technically, I think. Obviously, he's slightly older now, but still. And I have definitely noticed that it seems like, with the way this database is set up, we've been able to get first dibs on a few players that the other big AI sites seem to really, really like the look of. And it has allowed us a bit more financial muscle than I would have expected. I thought it was a one-off with the Elias Perez thing from last season, but it seems not to be, which means in future, going forward, I'm going to be more reticent to actually make these sales because I don't want it to make us so overpowered financially, basically. What also didn't help is that David Docampo then picked up an injury on international duty for Spain under 23s. The man we put all our hopes in this year was now going to be missing for 4 months, which means we were going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting with our backup goalkeeper, Ibrahima Sané, who I'll show you in a second. So without our first choice glovesman, we welcomed newly promoted Arca to the league and did so with a bang. Just 1 minute into the game, Krzyżanowski ducked inside his man before burying one in the top corner from close range. From there, we never looked back, with him turning provider soon after for Steuer's first of the year. In the second half, gaps grew as Lunga stretched for the strangest 1-2 you're likely to see, but calmly finished into the bottom corner. We put the icing on this time a normal cake soon after, as a beautiful one-touch passing move was finished off by yet again super sub Ori Kukonda. And the chance to extend our 100% league record came swiftly against Lechia, whom we'd beaten in a pivotal game in the title run-in last year. Despite overplaying it a tad, assist machine Krzyżanowski set it up for Ranjbar to score the only goal in the game that we were very fortunate to grab a win in, thanks to a glorious late save from who else but Ibrahima Sané. And I genuinely don't know if I even showed you Sané last season because we were not expecting him to be this good. He signed last summer but spent all of last year on loan at Badajoz, the club he actually joined from. I don't know if he even cost us any money. Yeah, he did. 250 grand, but still. And in 3 league games at this point, he'd kept 3 clean sheets. What more do you want? Particularly as the train kept rolling against Łódź, as it took us just 10 minutes to break through, Lunga's effort smashing off the bar to the feet of Katala, who tapped it home. The two then combined the other way, with Katala feeding a great run by Big Nigel for a calm finish. Lunga was in action again moments later as his drilled cross was popped in this time by Steuer to make it 3 before half-time. Our clean sheet record remained intact until the 83rd minute as Sané's cross was beautifully headed home for our first concession of the season. We quickly regained the 3-goal lead, however, as Ranjbar's wonderful ball over the top was latched onto by Rodado, who slotted it home for 4-1. 4 wins out of 4. And breathe. And sign more people. And when I said the German lower leagues were cooking, I was not joking. This is Sohail Stapelfeld, the best of the bunch. 7.5 grand. 7.5 grand from Karl Zeiss Heiner? Forgive my pronunciations. He is basically the Van den Bosch replacement. 33 years old is Big Dario now. The physicals are lacking in him a little bit. He's declining. We decided now is the time to try and find a guy that could be the starter. Wasn't expecting to find someone who was 18 and could be the starter. We were looking at like maybe a 21-year-old perhaps. Nope. He's just here now, and it means that Dario can slip back. This guy can be thrown straight in, and I'm excited about that. And then, would you believe it, I actually spent some money. Ibon Ibanez. In he comes, on loan from Real Murcia initially, but we triggered a clause within the contract for £800,000. Maybe a slight overpayment, but honestly, you've got to spend money at some point, right? Maybe? And then I dropped £250,000 on Ifanye Duru, a Nigerian striker from Enyimba Aba, I believe it was, but £250,000 for this type of quality. He is very well-rounded. Physical's great, technical's great, maybe lacks a little bit in certain mental attributes, but again, they're all things we can work on, and I felt that he's just one of those guys that could then alternate in. So Rodado's form had really... He was older now, he wasn't going to get the game time. It really was Katala, Foreman, with Kukonda, and probably Duru being the sort of 4 strikers that we'd rotate around up front, and that's fine. As entering match day 5, our 100% winning run was still on the cards, and it would be tested at home to Radomiak as they'd started the season strong themselves, but some world-class one-touch football in their box inside the first minute showed that we really are a cut above the rest at the moment. Katala then added his second of the game after a lovely ball round the corner to put the game beyond our opponents. Also, we thought, as a long goal kick seemed to confuse debutant Stapelfeld and the rest of our defence and allowed Depu to plop home and start the fight back. That was until super sub Audi pounced on our shot off the woodwork to poke home and continue his insane run off the bench. Can't score if he starts, but my goodness is he good off the bench. But a much tougher test awaited us in the Champions League playoff round as Olympiacos welcomed us to Greece. They started well as Taremi put them in front inside of 5 minutes. 2 minutes later, his deflected shot beat Sané at his near post, and we were curiously thinking of reasons why the Europa League has always been a better competition anyway. Better music, innit? Still in the first half, a set-piece play made it 3 and made me lose faith. But one thing I'll always say about Wisła is that we never give up. Furman latched onto the ball into the channel and squared for another Stoya finish. Unfortunately, it was 4-1 later in the second half as Onimiachi finished off a well-worked free kick. But then, a totally unforced error as Kaminski's cross was bundled into their own net despite us having no attackers in the same postcode. Surely we couldn't turn it around in the second leg. But this is Wisła. A somewhat rotated side, as you can imagine, played out a turgid 0-0 draw away at Kraków, with Sane pretty much keeping us in the game. And then we had the last of these major, very strange transfers. And this was one where we realised, wait, something's going on here, because Man United bid $7.5 million for Lamine Magasuba, a Spanish Marleyan player that we'd picked up, and again, we really didn't rate this guy that highly at all, which is why I was willing to let him go. But after that, we got some other bids on players, and I was like, you know what, this is getting ridiculous. We're just going to hang on to them at this point. But I think it's just because the Spanish lower league youth level just produces some insane players. And if you get in there early enough, before these teams find them, you can find some monsters at this level, seriously. But that was enough of that, as we had the second leg against Olympiacos to come, and it was now or never, qualify or bust. And after a bland first half, with us largely in control, Stoya decided it would be never, as he attempted what can only be described as an MMA move in the centre circle. Rather than winning a belt, he won a red card, some funny looks, and first dibs on the bubble bath. Amazingly, we won a penalty, which Rodado, of all people, was able to dispatch to claw us back into the game, but we couldn't get another goal, and in the end would have to settle for the Europa League this season, which ultimately isn't the end of the world, even if it does cost us a bit of money. At least we might win some games. Next up, back in the Ekstraklasa, we hosted Motor, and got the start of nightmares as Rodriguez's deflection carried the ball into our own net. We weren't behind for long though, as Stoya, fresh off his midweek murder spree, decided to show no mercy to their injured attacker and kept on playing. Eventually Lunga set up Foreman and finally scored his first of the season. Big Nige next provided an inch-perfect ball for Katala, matched with a stunning volleyed finish to flip the game. Right on half-time, he turned scorer as he calmly slotted Foreman's cross into the far corner. Game, set, match, maybe? Right after half-time, we switched off and allowed Motor back into things. But the 89th minute really takes the chaos cake. Trevino's looped cross was missed by Sane, cannoned off the bar, only for Stapelfeld and Rodriguez to simultaneously clear the ball straight into Marty's face for the equaliser. It's the sort of series of events that's best set to clown music, to be honest. So we decided to cheer ourselves up by bringing an old friend home. That's right, Kasper Duda. Left us last summer when that release clause was triggered by Legia. We were distraught because he was such a useful player in this team, and then they just didn't really play him that much. And the opportunity came to bring him back for around about £600,000, so a profit on the overall deal. And we jumped at the chance, needing that midfield depth, and just to bring Kasper back to the club. I hoped that he could make an impact, but often what happens with these situations is the player aren't what they used to be, and they fold down the team a little bit. Would that happen to him? Time would tell. And with that, the circus came to Polonia Bytom, newly promoted and struggling despite their ever-growing loan army from us. Surprisingly perfect header from Furman gave us the advantage, before Vandenbos headed a loose ball over the line for a comfy win. Easy, it's what you need. But then, Luis Eduardo's release clause of £4.8 million was triggered on deadline day by Juventus, and we thought all hope was lost. We have to put these in contracts sometimes because they're locked, red-locked, even in the agent meetings, and it's like if you want the player, you've got no choice. We are at a level now where it doesn't happen as often because we've got higher rep, but at the time, it was a must-do. So we did what we could. We offered him a new contract, and, well, as you can see, he chose to stay. I've never seen a player in years in FM turn down a release clause move, especially to Juve. And remember, regular starter, £3,500 a week. He is a loyal man, and with that 15 leadership, for me, you may feel differently, he's feeling like future captain material already. We had one last league game before our Europa League campaign kicked off, and it saw us face the bogey team from last year, Korona Kielce. But they gave us the biggest gift of all with a naughty red card after just 17 minutes. Revenge time, you might say. Except it wasn't, as despite battering them, Luis Eduardo celebrated the new contract by pushing their striker over in the box. They took the chance with open arms. It got even worse as we pushed late on and Gajic found our Saidi over the top. He notched past Sane to hand us our first defeat of the year against 10 men. They are cursed, they've got something on us, and I don't know what. Sane had been brilliant, then he drops 5.9. But what that meant for us was a little bit different. Despite that ridiculous start and the 5 straight wins, we had tailed off since then in the European football. 20 points on the board. Cracovia, newly promoted, also had 20 points, so did Legia Warszawa. And of course the team that beat us in the last game were right at our heels as well. We'd only conceded 7 times this year, which somehow still wasn't the best defence, but 20 goals is pretty good. But after such a flourishing start, we were kind of hoping to get a bit of a gap before the European games came round. It's just not likely to happen for a while, is it? But for now, much like previous years, the league would have to go slightly on the back burner as the European football took hold. And our first game in the Europa League took us to Serbia, and after some early chances, the typical happened. Vukotic found some space in the box, its outside of the foot shot was slammed home. It took us just 4 minutes to respond though, as Kuzemka's excellent first touch saw him open up space around 2 defenders to slide home the equaliser. As halftime approached, our corner frailties showed once more, and we'd be behind at the break. But there is one man we'd relied on for impact off the bench, and today was no different for Ordi Kukanda as he ghosted into the box to tap home Kaminski's cross and bail us out a point. Our first point in the Europa League. Hopefully we'd follow with some wins soon. Unfortunately, that goal scoring was not present the weekend as we played out a dull 0-0 draw. Unfortunately, midweek was much of the same as we huffed and puffed but could not blow down the House of Union Saint-Gilloise. Unfortunately, the goal scoring was not present at the weekend and a dull 0-0 draw was played out. Wait, what? Is this script just copied and pasted? What an awful derby. But at least it couldn't get any worse. Unfortunately, that goal scoring was not present at the weekend as we played out a dull 0-0 draw. Come on. Really? 5 straight draws? 4 straight 0-0 draws? Oh, you've heard of tiki-taka and catenaccio. Now meet melatonin ball. Hopefully, the international break would get the impotency out of our team's system. The even more ironic thing is, and I promise you this is true, at the time while this was happening on stream, Pog was in the next room building a set of drawers from IKEA that we'd just bought. And I have to say, I think her set of drawers was far more impressive than ours. Things then got even worse as Hassan Ranjbar and Marius Stoya got injured during the international break, while not on international duty. Riding bikes, climbing trees, I have no idea. Also, Dele Alli is still here, bless him. He's more of a mascot at this point, but he's happy to be here. But after that, the boys were back and refreshed. Those of them uninjured by the international break, that is. Inside a minute, we finally ended the horrible goalless run as Krzyżanowski slid one across for a deflected Katala tap-in, and everyone could breathe a great big sigh of relief. Unless you're GKS Katowice. 5 minutes later, he dinked one to the far post for an unlikely header from Naim. Next, Krzyżanowski found himself with a shooting chance, which dropped at the feet of Kukonda to add his first goal in a game he'd actually started, and Krzyżanowski's 3rd assist of the game. Moments later, the other side linked up with Naim, feeding Nigel for yet another goal from his office, just on the corner of the 6-yard box. In the second half, after a lull, we were right back to it as Krzyżanowski somehow set up Rodada for his 4th assist of the night. Wouldn't be us though without ballsing up the defensive run. Sané deserved the clean sheet after his heroics, but it was taken away from him in the 92nd minute by former Wisła player Paramet Arturai. Still, 8 clean sheets in 13 league games is phenomenal work. Unfortunately, there is a downside of you having such a good defensive record if you are drawing a lot of games 0-0, and that downside was evident as we stayed 4th in the league. Now 2 points off the top with Cracovia, newly promoted Cracovia. I cannot remind you of this enough, the story of them in this save. 2nd in the first season, then relegated in the second season, won the title in the second tier at Akanta last year, and now they're leading the damn league. Which is made worse because they're our biggest rivals. We'd been here before. Last year we were further away from the league title than this at much later in the season and still pulled it back. Only 2 points off the top. Stellar defensive record, somehow only bettered by Lechia Gdansk, who don't score a lot, but they don't concede any. We weren't worried, but it would be nice to win a little bit more frequently. Now at this point, a quick note. This is when the biggest Now at this point, a quick note, stepping in from the admin room here. This is when the big patch came out in January at this point in the season. Now one big change came with it that you probably didn't notice, but I as a creator did. And that is that the way that I normally record the goals for these videos is in post, obviously, so I can do the editing in the way that I like. But I usually watch the goals and it shows you the clock at the top and it's brilliant, so it doesn't show spoilers, anything like that. It's fantastic, it's great. However, with the latest version of the patch, it now just shows the final score at the top and the end of the match at all times in the highlights, which means I then couldn't do that. So now I've had to zoom the highlights in further to not spoil the results in the games as we're talking about them, but it does mean I'm going to have to give you a little bit more contextual information in the voiceover so that you know exactly when the goals were scored, or at least a better idea until they come up with some way to fix that, because that's kind of shit. But with goals back on the menu, we'd done the inevitable and forgotten to rest players for an inevitably huge game against Lille in the Europa League, meaning that we'd basically have to have tired legs, fresh vibes, and the power of friendship. And that friendship combined for something magical before half-time as Katala unleashed a vicious effort from just outside the box as we tried a new set-piece setup, giving us a surprise lead. The surprises continued 2 minutes later when Nigel Lunga remembered that he was Kevin De Bruyne to play a world-class ball in behind for Kukanda, again, to slip home. Dreamland then got compounded as Katala was sent into the channel, only to put it on a plate for the on-running Mosquera to surely guarantee us our biggest win of the save. 3-0 already. But we weren't finished, as Kukonda's jinky run into the box set up Duda of all people to hammer home the 4th. Amazingly, his control on the turn in the final 10 minutes put through Katala, who calmly dispatched for our 5th of the game and made this a night to remember for all involved. Massive luck and some tremendous goalkeeping giving us the win, but what a start! And 10 goals in our last 2 games. That's more like it, friends. Melatonin is over. It's time for caffeine ball. Unfortunately, that goal scoring was not present at the weekend as a dull 0-0 draw was played out. Come on now. At least we had this. Essentially, they will cost you from time to time. Oh! I can't believe that's nearly gone in. That would have been the greatest goal I've ever seen. A chance for a change came up in the cup as we tried out a slightly tweaked version of our tactical instructions and battered our second-tier opponents for the entire first half, with Furman missing golden chances like a deliberate saboteur. So naturally, the first goal came just before the break, when scorer skinned our defenders, ran the entire length of the pitch, and scored a worldie. Eventually, the pressure caved them in as Duda scored another lovely finish from the edge of the box. Naeem then had a shot deflected into Kaziemka's path to turn the game around with 20 to play. This seemed to open the floodgates and allowed Nigel Lunga yet another goal. So bad was Foreman in this game that I jokingly brought on Santiago Kubishin as a striker and ensured chat that he would do a better job than Foreman. With 3 minutes to go, I was proven right as the CM picked the ball up, ran all the way through, and finished easily to make me the smuggest man alive. With things now looking up for us, honey, it's time for your regularly scheduled disaster class. As we took on Pogon, a team in freefall after 5 straight losses, we decided to be their parachute. Greenwood was played in behind and gave them the lead late in the first half. We managed to draw level a few moments later with a rocket of a free kick from Katala, but it was all for nothing, as some more sleepwalking defending and a deflection allowed Pogon to take a marginally deserved win. At least we'd have an easier game up next. Oh wait, we played Braga away. And credit where credit's due, we rode the pressure from the Portuguese side and played on the break. Katala played a perfect through ball for Kukonda, who has now earned the starting role away from Foreman, gave the keeper the eyes and gave us a surprise lead, and we actually held on for an insane win in the Europa League, but knew that we'd have to face yet another bogey team in the league a few days later. Our trip to Piasklevica started about as well as you'd expect. Just before half-time, Harit put Naeem on toast and popped in there first. Right after the break, Naeem was then out-battled from a corner to make it 2. At this point, I got desperate and threw on the underperforming Foreman. Eduardo decided to yeet one over the top for the youngster to chase, and to his credit, he controlled it well and got us back in the game, throwing egg in my face in the process. But then... more long balls over the top, perhaps? We're going to concede straight away again, aren't we? Oh my god, wait a minute. Alexander Furman has a point to prove. He's all the way through. Alexander Furman! I have never seen 2 goals scored that close together. It's 2-2. What? Yeah, I've never seen that before. That is incredible work. Shows me up, I guess. Although I'm claiming that I motivated him to do that. By the way, this is all massively against the run of play at this point. It was then all made even more hilarious when Rodado found some space to fire it across, which Mosquera slammed home for the winning goal in stoppage time. A complete muggery of the highest order. Every shot on target for us was a goal. Back in Europe against Vikingur, we expected an easier time, and that's what we got. Duda put us ahead after just 2 minutes. What a return to the club he's made, by the way. 2 minutes later, Katala was pulled down in the box and converted the penalty to pretty much make us uncatchable. 18 minutes in, Lunga made it 3 to really kill the game. Before Mosquera reacted fastest with 10 to go to make it 4-0, and our 4th consecutive clean sheet in Europe, but with wins. Who knew that was possible? I don't have a custom league graphic for the Europa League, obviously, but here's how things stood at this point. 3rd. We were 3rd in the Europa League group. 11 points, only 2 conceded, 10 goals scored, clubbing people. Now, admittedly, you can see from the stats, we were fortunate to have these results, but ultimately, sometimes you just need a little bit of luck. It would no doubt regress a little bit and we'd fall back. We could still maybe get top 8, but I would be happy if we could sit top 16. And right now, we were still actually only 4 points clear of it with 5 games to go. Sorry, 3. Either way, very, very pleasing. And it was then time for one of the worst performances I've seen in this save. Usually we're the bogeymen for Jagiellonia Białystok, but right before half-time, Sané flapped needlessly at a cross and Yang Hyun-jin drilled into the vacant net. But just before the hour mark, Kukonda dropped the ball off to Lunga to slot in yet another heroic goal, and despite having an XG of 0.14, we'd mugged them off. 1 shot on target, we'd managed to get a goal. Sané was the hero yet again. This man was carrying us right now. At this point, I completely had enough of us. We simply weren't creating enough, and despite being defensively stable a lot of the time, it was boring. And I realized the dogmatic approach with the high discipline style was simply not working. We were getting into positions which were great, but then overplaying it because the players weren't allowed to express themselves in the right way. So we didn't change anything beyond switching from disciplined to more expressive. That was the only main ethos tactical change we made on the whole, with both the wide and the narrow tactic, although really only used the wide from this point onwards. One other tweak did occur later in the season, which was to go from a free role for our number 10 to a advanced midfielder. advanced playmaker that is, and allowing him even more freedom of movement basically with a few less forward runs, which you'll all find in the tactics that I've linked in the description. I definitely do think this is the way to go. It was actually at half-time in this game that we made those changes for the first time and got our desserts. 7 minutes later, Duda was there to pop home our first goal of the game after some nice play in the box. Soon after, he spun beautifully instead of shooting to set up Lunga yet again to make it 2. And then with 2 minutes left, Furman pounced on a loose ball in the box to make it 3. A good performance on paper, but hopefully this is a sign of things to come. Particularly as we start to play against better teams, hopefully this will allow us to be good against both. Especially as at this point we had now fallen to a low point, I suppose, in the season. Just over the halfway mark, 34 points on the board, which is still tight to a lot of teams around us, but crucially, 4 points off the top. The defense was still fine, goal difference had remained relatively similar, but we really needed to get some form going, because I was not about to let our crosstown rivals win the damn league in their first season back in the top flight. Not on my watch. But they'd only lost 1 game in the first half of the year. But as we know from last year, 5 points is nothing, even with a few games to go. Shout out to GKS Katowice still propping up the table as well. Dangerous times. And it's worth noting that this time last season, we were 10th and had 29 points. In fact, we had played 19 games, so we're 5 points ahead of where we were last season with a game less played, and we're much further up the league. So maybe not as bleak as it looked, although that did require a Herculean comeback just to achieve. So we would have to do something similar, but less, like a mini Hercules, his weaker younger brother, Particles, or Articles, Barnacles, etc. And then an opportunity came across my desk, too good to turn down. Jens Hjertedal. £5.5 million we've paid at this point. If you can see, he hasn't joined us yet, but I don't know. He was willing to join us. He is going to be on 10 grand a week, which puts him joint as our highest paid player, but we knew that we needed to start paying a bit more money to bring some better talent in. And it's not like he's some guy that we're not going to get sell-on fee out of potentially. He's only 23, just as well. And he, to me, would strengthen our midfield in such a dramatic way that he was 100% worth us absolutely shattering our transfer record for this save at least. A rotated squad had a chance for some quick progression in the cup against Legia's B team and got off to the perfect start when Damasiovic set up Katala for a wonderful fanned effort over the keeper. With 6 minutes left on the clock, he provided again to set up substitute Rodada to kill the game. They got a goal back, but it doesn't matter, we were through to the next round. But the set pieces once again cost us as Manu Kayan gave Lek an early lead. But we rallied, and before half-time, Lunga took up his usual spot and Naeem fed in with the perfect pass to be converted for his 8th goal of the season. We probably could have had more and probably should have won, but the performances were getting better. We then rolled into our final game before the winter break, hosting Aberdeen in Europe, and after some early brightness, we were caught out by a ball over the top. Ambrose's driven cross tapped in by Nisbet to leave us chasing. Unfortunately, the second half, the same play got us again. This time Milanovic into the channel, found Nisbet for another tap-in. We fought fire with fire, launching Katala over the top to bring us back into the game moments later, but despite our bluster, the result stayed the same. Disappointing result, but probably deserved after all the luck we have had. And then everyone went off skiing, had a lovely time. We were continuing to do recruitment, but knew that our players couldn't join us until the middle to late January because of the way our window works. And we'd be back in European action before that would even come to pass. And that action was at Villa Park. And Steuer was once again the villain, made an awful decision to push a player in the box. Ollie Watkins converted the penalty. He also had a chance in the second half where he went round everybody, including the goalie, and just refused to shoot. Steuer, is he pushing for a move? I don't know what he's doing here, but it's not working. But then the window opened and the deluge of players that we've been building up to sign for us joined. So I'm just going to run you through them now. Ibrahim Sidibe, 220 grand, ASIC Mimosas, really solid, decent centre-back for the future, just brilliant. And even better, Dusan Obradovic. Now this guy is £2 million from Red Star, fair enough, but the thing I like about him the most is that he can play as a striker, technically a number 10 as well, CM, even DM because he's got 11 attacking. And that's fantastic because the versatility that he gives us with his current ability as well is phenomenal for 19 years old. So going from what we had, which was Ranjbar and Nigel and those sort of guys and Duda, which they're still around and they will still be great, but they're very young and very unpolished, to a pairing with Dusan Obradovic and Jens Hjertedal suddenly makes us into a very different beast. Another 2 million was dropped on Fabrice Facone because he just... Look at the heading, marking, tackling, positioning, aggression, bravery, jumping. He has almost every box ticked. 2 million quid from Valenciennes. We had to pay a lot, but breakthrough prospect. He's not going to expect to play yet. Then a more traditional signing for us, a random freebie from the lower leagues of Spain, Ander Redondo. He's 20 years old, but I mean, these are the exact type of guys that I really hope we can get into the loan farm sooner rather than later, because they will benefit other Polish teams to an unbelievable level. There's also Alexander Golnak, £200,000 from Carl Zeiss Henner as well. We've done a little bit more shopping there. We also dropped £300,000 on Alessandro Loria, an Italian goalkeeper. Haven't shopped much in Italy really yet, but he came across us and we thought, why not? Now, he is a mercenary, which is not the greatest personality, I agree, but the communication is fantastic, so at least when he's yelling profanities at us, we'll understand them. But you're thinking, surely you don't need another goalkeeper that's willing to be a backup when you've already got Docampo and Sané. Yeah, stay tuned for that. But before any of that, we had our final game in the group stages of the Europa League, and frankly, it didn't really matter. We were unlikely to get top 8. A point maybe, if we could get it, would give us a chance at top 16, but we were happy with what we had as we welcomed Lazio. It was a free hit, and what followed was a brilliant performance in tempestuous weather conditions, but 10 minutes from time, Kaminski's looped cross was missed by the keeper and allowed Mosquera to finish and give us the lead. A few minutes later, the cake was iced as Mosquera's shot cannoned off the unsuspecting Rodado's face to give us all 3 points and 10th place in the Europa League. 10th place. We still have to be in the playoff round, but we'd get a chance at a great draw. Except we drew Aberdeen. Again, 3 times we'd have to play them in the same season. It didn't go well last time, but that was for later. As back in the league, it was the opposite in terms of weather, and the crisp winter sun lit up the pitch in Gdansk, and so did we. Some lovely passing in the box led the ball to the new man Jens Hjortedal on his debut, who fired home a rasping shot just half an hour into that debut. It was then Stoyer's turn from close range to wrap up the match in a very important title battle. Now comes the bad news. This. On deadline day for the European sides, the big one that is, obviously our deadline goes into February, Bayern put a £2.9 million bid on the table for Ebrahima Sané, and we thought that seems low, and then we realised it was his release clause. Because of that year he'd spent out at Badajoz, we hadn't seen as much of him and had forgotten about that part of his contract because we'd signed him so long ago when we had to put those in. And he said he'd be willing to stay. He wants to stay. So we decided, screw it. It's a chance to offer him a new contract like we did with Luis Eduardo, get that same kind of loyalty out of him. So I offered him huge money. I believe it was £12,000 a week. Literally our highest paid player, star player, because he's a goalkeeper. And frankly, when you get a goalie that just works in the match engine for whatever reason, you keep them. As you can see, that didn't happen. But he then said, I'm going to go talk to Bayern. I want more money from Bayern. I thought, wow, we might actually have a chance here because they're obviously not offering him enough or squad statuses. And then he just signed for Bayern. £6,000 a week. Half the money that he was on here, or would have been on here, to go to Munich and not play because his squad status is going to be tiny. They've got ridiculous keepers that he's definitely not going to be playing ahead of. Now, as part of that, we got him back on loan for the full rest of the season because we just needed to at this point. But it is such a kick in the teeth. But hey, release clauses are there. That's life. What is a little bit annoying, though, is because of the fact that he left on deadline day and came back after the registration window for Europe left, he was technically taken out of the squad because he left and came back on loan, even though he never left the club, which meant he was now deregistered for Europe and we couldn't put him back in again, which meant that our 4th choice goalkeeper was now going to have to play against Aberdeen. Anthony Bess. Showed you him earlier. We sold him to Arsenal for £4 million. This was more one of those ones where he just simply wasn't going to play for us, and I figured if we could just sell him for whatever they offer, and maybe they'll do well out of him, maybe not. We got a clause, it could be okay. It's not huge money considering what he's worth now, but it's something to get him over the line. And it's a shame because I do like him, but there's only so many strikers you can have in the squad, and you couldn't loan him out because of his squad status, so now he's gone to Arsenal. I also sold Miguel Ferreira, one of our sort of number 10 kind of guys, to Lech Poznan for 1.7 million because they wanted him, and it's nice that they're interested in our players, and if these guys aren't going to find loans, getting them out on permanent deals for other Polish sides is about as best as we can do, because at least they can make profit off the player later, and he will improve them. But back in the league, Sané's first action after his big move was to not get down fast enough to stop Romani's low effort, though perhaps I'm being harsh. Luckily, it didn't matter, as 15 minutes later, Obradovic, our other new CM, got off the mark for us with surely goal of the season, receiving the ball not even close to the area, but curling a powerful effort into the top corner to announce himself. What a pairing him and Big Jens are going to be. But then it was Europa League knockout time. This time we got off to a much better start. Obradovic, the provider this time, with a Harry Wilson-esque assist for Katala to head home. Sadly, a push in the box allowed Kevin Nisbet to slot home yet another goal against us. Got even worse 5 minutes later as a mess in the box meant he was there to poke in yet another, this time with his head. Stempak was looking all at sea, which I guess Aberdeen is close to the sea. Maybe he should have been on an oil rig. But before the half was even complete, he'd got his hat-trick, a beautiful volley, to give us a mountain to climb in an area where mountains are abundant. A mountain which went from Snowdon to Everest on the hour mark as Ambrose found space, made it 4-1, and the Scottish bogeyman had struck again. And then unfortunately, our goal scorer... I'm not going to do that, come on now. Awful performance. If it wasn't for Sané, we'd have lost this game as well. What was going on? Possibly the minds were on the second leg. And it was the dream start for us too, with Katala's looped cross nodded down by Foreman for Stoyer to bury. Foreman had come back in due to a huge drop-off from Big Audi, unfortunately. Just after half an hour, Damasiewicz good work out wide led to Big Jens getting 2 bites at the cherry and a chance to score a goal. But that is where it stayed. We huffed and puffed, but we could not lift the weight of that first leg defeat, and sadly bowed out of the Europa League at the playoff round 4-3 to Aberdeen. Disappointing, would have liked to have gone further, but still happy with the performance and the coefficient points we'd earned. The best thing now, we could get our heads down and focus solely on the league, because we needed to. And just 5 minutes into our game against Kraków, we got a taste of what this team could do. We do need this to be a comfortable way. Oh, no, please. Yes! We then gave up too much space in the box to allow more CO to finish, but just after the break, Krzyżanowski turned scorer as he dug out a lovely strike from the corner of the 6-yard box. But much like Van Gogh, we're only happy when we're drawing, and 10 minutes from time, Anasai's deflected shot let us feel calm with our third in a row. Hopefully the cup would be a little break from that. And it was, as Kasper Duda buried inside 5 minutes. Joran Hoffmann added a penalty 5 minutes later. A third goal was in after a beautiful interchange, this time turned in by Furman. Our opponents did get a couple back, but it was enough for us to get it over the line. But that complacency when we get leads is really obvious. Back in the league, if you can't stop drawing, something has to change. And Golic decided to be the change he wanted to see, for us, by putting through his own net. We got the much needed 3 points, and just in time to play the bottom club. For once, we didn't let the fans down. Stoya jumped on a loose ball to give us an early lead. Then after 11 minutes, Jens' superb ball over the top allowed Katala to provide a tap-in for Furman to make it 2. It wouldn't be us without some silly in there as well, so we gave Broda way too much space to curl home a dream goal. Not to worry, as Katala bagged us a third on the hour to put the game beyond them. Made even better 2 minutes later when Obradovic fired a shot into the attic of the goal and the battering was on the cards. It then failed to materialise as we let them all the way back into 4-3. Sané had some explaining to do. Yet again, it seemed like he was already mentally moving into his apartment in Munich. Just in time to face the old enemy, Korona Kielce. But Furman giving us the lead under a minute into the game was exactly what the doctor ordered. He'd also ordered a prescription for shimmying as Hjörtedal set up Furman, stopped the ball, and popped it past a paralysed goalkeeper to make it 2-0 inside the first half. Finally exercising some demons, except not for long as Rivas' low effort gave them a route back into the game before half-time. The mission was complete after 60 minutes as Berger Hansen dispatched a penalty and put us back in our box. Nightmares on the cards, and we were playing like crap. But we started to push forward, and the joy came with 3 minutes to play. Stoya was taken out by 2 players. He was probably chirping off about their mums or something. He will do that, but needless to say, the ball then fell into space, and Furman completed his hat-trick, and what a return to form. He runs mainly on spite. Mostly spite towards me. He wasn't even done as he grabbed a 4th goal of the game in the 96th minute, and the winning run was continuing, and the demons were hopefully leaving us. And much like the last few games, the goals and vibes were flowing freely, although it did take till 35 minutes to really catch fire with Stoya slamming into an empty net after a glorious cross. 4 minutes later, he'd done it again, thanks to a nice assist from Big Jens, who I genuinely don't think I've seen make a mistake so far. Furman then turned Harry Kane with a defence-splitting long ball that gave Katala just one choice to make it 3-0 and keep the train rolling. But you must remember, Wisła is gonna Wisła, so we allowed Akinyola to run faster than sound and get them a consolation goal. Jens got us back to a 4-1 lead again, but as usual, we once again just concede goals. It's what we do now, it's part of our culture. But then we had the youth intake. Oh yes, oh yes. And this was our reward, Maciej Piakowski. I think he's the best player that's come through our academy in this save, certainly for his starting point. Now, it's all very well to say, like, he's got 2-star CA, 5-star PA. We've had players come through our intakes like that in the past. Damasiewicz a couple of years ago. The difference is our max level of our squad is vastly better than it was back then. So to maintain that level relative to our team is exciting. He's got excellent acceleration and agility, which I love for that. Great natural fitness for bombing up and down. Low on strength, but he's 15. Give the guy a break. Stamina's excellent too. Pace is a little low, but it will go up with time, hopefully. He can tackle to a reasonable extent. It's at least 10, all right? That's good for us. He's got good crossing. His dribbling's not too bad either. He's got great technique. He just looks like a fabulous option. And it's cool that we've got 2 great fullbacks or wingbacks in our intakes in the last few years, because it's going to allow us to keep a really lovely homegrown Polish core. And league table-wise, things were looking a lot more bright for us with this new goal-scoring ethos we had. We still weren't top, and the gap was actually still only 2 points from where it was before, but the goal difference was climbing, we were scoring more goals, and it felt like things were happening. Cracovia had started to lose a few games, and the cracks were starting to appear in the veneer, and with 7 games to go, we had nothing else to worry about. We felt that we could overhaul that deficit. It was still very tight with Jagiellonia being in the battle as well. Thank God we got that point against them, because that's useful for head-to-head. And really, there were still 6 teams involved in this battle, with a few guys there on 47 points. Largely, they'd probably get cut adrift, but you never know with this league. And then, despite it being out of the window, we stumbled upon a player who we think could be a genuine world game changer for our team. Now, we haven't signed him yet, but I will show you at the end of the video, because I feel like I have to, just because he is just ridiculous. £4.7 million as well, but still, I need to show you him in a moment though. For first, what was happening in the league is we were playing Cracovia away next in a crucial derby match. If we won, we'd finally go back to the top of the league, and crucially, it would give us a head-to-head advantage over them should we tie on points. And under the lights on Friday night, we set about that task. After half an hour, things got even better. Eduardo played a perfectly timed ball over the top, which Katala met on the volley to draw first blood. 12 minutes after the break, Saba made the inconceivable decision to clatter the ball into Stoya's face in the middle of the pitch. Katala pounced on the loose ball, great first touch, set himself up to bury it and hand us all 3 points in the most important derby in years. It was then on to the cup semi-final against Lech Poznan, which on paper looked tough, but on the night looked anything but. Can't show all the goals because we'd be here all day, but the pick of the bunch was Hjertedal's absolute curling rocket to make it 4-1 and leave us with our first cup final of the save, which just so happened to be a derby against Cracovia, because apparently they just follow us around like a bodyguard. Back in the league, our cup exploits had seemingly had no effect on our fitness levels as we faced an informed Rook side, but took just 4 minutes for Katala to find a totally free Obradovic to power home the opener. We couldn't hold on until the interval though, as a cutting through ball allowed Shevchik to slot in a surprise leveller, the joy of which lasted just 2 minutes before Stoya drilled home through a melee in the box. Right after the break, Foreman gave us delight and continued his good run. A brilliant solo run by Coffey sadly hit the post, but Katala was there to rebound and kill the game entirely. Consolation with 20 minutes left was nothing more than that. The goal scoring is humming, but again, Sané's complacency was really starting to show whenever we got a big lead. And a tough test at a resurgent GKS awaited us in the sun. Obradovic wasted no time in popping them back in the box after 4 minutes. Before the opening 10 were even played, however, they were back level as our defenders decided that football truly was a spectator sport, even for the players on the pitch. Thankfully, 10 minutes later, Katala was able to spin and fire home at the near post to restore our lead, which we never relinquished, giving us another crucial win in the title race. A much sterner challenge awaited us next against Legia, but as usual, we struck early, and it was a proud moment as Efania Duru finally managed to get his first goal after months of trying and missing. I bet you'd forgotten about him. 5 minutes from time, Nigel Lunga sealed it with a big Nige moment. Except that just a minute later, we gave the ball away, Barbosa put it on a plate, and they were back in things. The hope was there. Hope which swiftly became glory as we proceeded to allow the exact same thing to happen again in the 91st minute, because we clearly enjoyed it so much the first time. And vital points were dropped in the title race, which now saw us be 3 points clear at the top of Jagiellonia, not Cracovia. And of course, we'd be playing Jagiellonia on the final day of the season, because that's just, Poland just writes the script for us, doesn't it? Why can't we just have an easy time? Out of interest, their run-in would see them play Lech Poznan up next before Arka. Our worry was that if they beat us on the final day and the gap was still only 3 points, they would win the title on head-to-head. That would be horrifying. But their next game against Lech Poznan would be a crucial time for them to not drop points. But before we could even think about the league, we had the cup final against Cracovia. Ultimately, it was a drab affair in the rain, and much like most of our games against Cracovia, it was decided by narrow margins. Once again, Nigel Lunga popping up in his office to drill home the winning goal after 28 minutes. He truly has become that James Igbekeme-esque clutch player that you can always rely on, and what a way to win our first domestic cup. Over Cracovia too. Next up against Pogon, it was a must-win moment for us, and just 20 minutes in, Katala swept home a lovely cross to give us the lead. But then, I can't help but feel like Big Jens might be a little bit annoyed about. Imagine if this gets disallowed because of him being in the way. He's headed a ball into the net from an offside position when I'm pretty certain the original shot was just going in. What are you doing, Alexander? Yeah, I have no idea what he was trying to do here. And imagine if this had cost us. In the end, it didn't, because we managed to get the dub and stay 3 points clear of Jagiellonia. But they also managed to get their win against Lech Poznan to stay 3 points behind us, knowing that they'd play Arka in the next game, and we had a more difficult match up next against Piast, who admittedly, while low down the league, still had some quality in them. Not what you needed. We didn't want to be 3 points ahead in that final game. It had to be 4. So naturally, we decided to get jittery, and after 17 minutes, Marcelo Ryan's powerful header put us behind and in real trouble. We threw everything at them, loads of personnel changes, and throwing it to attacking in hopes of finding the turnaround. Then, in the 73rd minute, Abu Coffey slipped a ball into super sub Audi Kukonda, back in form, did what he does, drilled a shot, deflected, but it gave us the equaliser. And that was it. We could not find the answer. A 1-1 draw away from home, exactly when we didn't need it the most. Except they couldn't do it either. They lost to Arka and handed us the title despite only drawing. We then moved 4 points clear of them. I think it might have even been 5, going into the final day, and had actually finally wrapped up a title before the final day. Now you'll see the gap to, of course, Cracovia is 3 points, but we have the head-to-head advantage thanks to our win against them just a few games to go. Oh, a sigh of relief. Finally winning a title a little bit early, and it meant that we could play the kids on the final day and get a lovely guard of honour from the team that we just pipped to the title. And it took them all of 2 minutes to make an impact. putting a beautiful cross in for Duran Hoffman to slam in, another player to watch out for next year. In fact, both of them are. Next, Duru added a second from close range after 9 minutes, and then a heartwarming moment as Kasper Duda scored our third and last goal of the season. The man who'd come back home had genuinely been a useful player for us, and it was just nice to see him cap off the year in such fine form. I'll show you the proper league table here, because they have improved this slightly, but I still like the other graphics, right? So, in the end, 6 points clear at the top, did manage to win it. Only 2 defeats. It's the 13 draws that really cost us. In the end, we were definitely up there, and it's nice to see. Cracovia do come second in the end, of course. Korona Kielce getting into Europe along with Lechia. 5 teams in Europe next year. 4 of them are different from the previous year. One of the teams from last year got relegated. Piasklevice down, along with Pogon and, of course, Polonia Bytom. Katowice stay up. Rakov are absolute bobbins, but they are still staying in the top flight right now. But like Legia Warszawa, Lech Poznan, both of them miss out on Europe, particularly as Furman won Young Player of the Season, which is always nice. And Ilian Rodriguez also got Defender of the Season for us too. And those 3 were genuinely astonishingly good, but more on them in a minute. The second tier looked like this. Widzew Łódź absolutely run away with it. Well, from promotion at least. They were only 5 points clear of their nearest team, Górnik Zabrze, but both of them were so far clear and were practically promoted in October. Wisła Płock in the end did manage to win the playoffs, so that's kind of, I guess, justice for them there. But that's how it's largely the same teams rotating at the moment, at least. So you know what we did in Europe? What about our Polish friends? It's good and bad. First, we'll start with Brukbet. As you can see here, they were beaten. Well, they beat Aris Limassol quite nicely, but then were knocked out by Feyenoord. Tough draw, particularly in the third round. Never likely to do much with them, but that being, of course, they were out very early. Then there was Lech Poznan in the Europa League, which they lasted in for all of one tie, where they were beaten by would you believe it, Aberdeen, but did at least manage to beat Finnish side Cups to get into the group stages of the Conference League. And then we come to Piasklevice, a team that we expected nothing from, particularly of how they played, and they were taken out by Molde from the Europa League, but they then beat Riga. Not a bad result, albeit somewhat narrowly, and then beat Lokomotiv Plovdiv to actually get into the group stage of the Conference League. So that was 2 teams in the Conference League. Lovely to see. I'm going to have to zoom this in a bit because the game loves spoilers on this screen and there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately, but they did do well. I thought they'd fix this menu that lets you see who they'd beaten. This isn't entirely correct. As you can see, Lokomotiv Plovdiv are in there, but it does show some of the wins that they got. It's still not great though, unfortunately. Point being, they did get 8th in the league, which is incredibly good, like genuinely astonishing for them. Lech Poznan as well, getting 11th, good position for the next round, and lots of wins, right? Between them, they managed to get 7 wins in the Europa Conference League. That's fantastic. And in the playoff round, Lech Poznan beat Bahus 11-6, including a 5-4 defeat as well, which means they put 7-1 past them in the first game. Really did switch off. And in the round of 16, they bowed out to Rapid Wien, who are a decent side, to be fair, so I can't really complain. But Piasklevice beat Viking 4-1 and into the quarter-finals. At that point, they were knocked out by Eintracht Frankfurt, but good progress for them. I think the furthest we've seen a Polish side go in the Conference League so far was that semi-final for Legia in Season 1, maybe? So for them to do it whilst getting relegated, impressive. They may regret it, though. So you're probably thinking, okay, where's Legia? Because they weren't in the Europa League with you, and they weren't in the Conference League. Did they surely get dropped out all the way? No. For you see, Legia did something more ridiculous. They started in the Champions League League Path second round qualifiers. They beat Luzern of Switzerland 5-1 on aggregate as well. They then beat Rangers 3-1 on aggregate, which is insane. Then they drew PSV. And then they beat them as well. 4-1 on aggregate, home and away wins against PSV Eindhoven. What are they doing? Which then meant, of course, that it was the embarrassing moment where the champions of the league were dumped out, but the team that came second went all the way from the second qualifying round and got into the group stages of the Champions League. Good for money, bad for us. Once they were there, it didn't go that well. As you can see, they came 32nd, but they did win a game, which is more than we did. They came higher than we did, and they got more points than we did. And their one win, you might be wondering, who was that against? Brighton. They beat Brighton at the Amex 3-1. Incredible scenes. But fair play to them. Like, it's good for coefficient for us, at least, and it's been a really good year for that, as this is the current hierarchy for the year. Now, this is where I'd usually show it, but this one is broken in the current patch. It shows the women's coefficient on both of them, hence Denmark doing things there, but it does still work under the hood, thankfully, so that's fine. Point being, on the year, we had a 13.25 season, and yet we were still 10th on the year. It's weird. I feel like we should be making progress, but we're kind of not. Austria's performances this year have cost us even more, because you look for next year, we thought we were going to be overtaking Belgium, and we have. The difference is Austria have overtaken us as well, so we're going to remain exactly where we were going into next year, which I think is 11th. It sucks, because 10th place gives you that guaranteed group stage places, which we really do need. But crucially, we've got that 5-point year coming off the radar soon, so that should really leapfrog us into the top 10 anyway. But still, good season for us. Less of a good season, though, for Belgium. 6.7 points. They've had 3 or 4 years now of absolute crap. And when they lose that year next year, they could drop out of the top 15 at this rate and really take this, just go down. England are 40 points clear of everybody else, being an absolute menace as usual. So, but we'll worry about them later. From a stats perspective, this is kind of where we're at, right? Katala played the most minutes as well. I mean, 3,300 minutes, 20 goals, 10 assists, really, really good numbers. But look at the next three players that play the most minutes. Eduardo, Rodriguez, Abdullahi. The three centre-backs that were always rotating around. Not a single one of them, as far as I know, missed a single minute through injury. It was literally, you're a bit tired from the last game, we'll whip you around. And it was just these three rotating around the entire season. Not one of them got an injury all year. And you can see from their ratings that the consistency out of them is wild. Now, we play a lot of short corner stuff now again, so that's why they're not scoring goals or getting chances, but they're just so unbelievably solid, all three of them. I'll just quickly show you Rodriguez too, because he actually won Defender of the Season, the Andorran. And it's not hard to see why. I still believe that Abdullahi might be the guy with the highest ceiling of the three at the moment, but either way, they're ridiculous. Top assister was yet again Jakub Krzyzanowski, but Naeem and Katala all got 10 as well. Great to see. And to see four guys get into double digits was really nice too. Nigel with 11, Fuhrman with 13, Steuer with 13. Still a crap rating. Now that we've settled into the tactic, his ratings are creeping up, so in theory, he should be better next year, I hope. But he does drop a clanger every now and then. And Duda, on his return, 6 goals, 1 assist. Love to see it. And I just wanted to highlight this stat here, because you remember I showed you at the very start of the video that Naeem was, I think, at 6.9 dribbles per 90 minutes. And he was far clear of everybody else. He now upped that this year to 10.1. Nobody can get near him. Krzyzanowski can get to 4.9, and you can see that Damasiewicz is definitely below that, for sure. So he's not quite on his level yet. But Kaminsky and Coffey at 4 and 4.1, nobody even comes close to what Naeem can do, and he's got no different instructions, it's just his pure ability. He probably should have scored more goals than he has, honestly. As for the loan farm, it's really hard to show stuff. We've got 104 players out on loan, which is impressive considering we pretty much had our entire loan farm come back. You'll have noticed this too. It seems that players that are in non-playable or view-only leagues refuse to go back out on loan for some reason, or rather the clubs don't want them back, no matter how well they've played. All of these guys, despite their performances, although this is an affiliate side, will most likely come back. So I guess I just want to try and find a guy that isn't at one of those clubs to highlight maybe the best performances. And it's probably Quentin Koeman, the centre-back from last season who we found a loan to Wisła Kraków. Thought it was the perfect moment to get him out, and if he will go back to them, that will be fantastic, because then we can start getting the 2-year loan cycle started on these guys, trapping them there for a little bit to let them fully develop. Like, he played 25 games this year for them. That's what these guys need. He ain't playing for our first team anytime soon, but if he could just stay there and get good, this is where that nation building happens. Finances-wise, we have £37 million in the bank, which is good. Now we have, I think, made a loss this season despite that, just because, well, you can see we have on the graph, because we have spent a lot more money since January and not a lot more money's come in, of course. We should get some European prize money soon, I guess, but that's okay. And our budget for this season is 22 million quid. Which is a good amount. Obviously, I never spend it all because I like to try and maintain some fiscal responsibility, and I want to try and bump the wages up a little bit as well. If we find the right players, we might well pick up a few guys for more money if we find the really right guy. And I think we may do, because team report scouting is beginning. We've not done that at all in this save yet. So a lot of the players we've been targeting are largely from very small sides that I would never have naturally looked at for the most part. This is going to go us to more of the usual suspect type teams. And those guys have remained largely untouched yet, like a fresh layer of snow. So that's why I'm so excited about today's stream. And the aims for next season are really simple. We want an easier time domestically. We basically want what we wanted this season, just again. I want to try and get back in the Champions League, but I'm also not fussed if we don't. If we end up in the Europa League group stage again, I'm not bothered, because I think at this stage, it's really good for us to get these winning opportunities, get that extra coefficient points, and we don't really need the Champions League money yet, although this will start to wane on us. So even if we don't get it this year, I will be okay with that. Next year, though, I think we really, really do, and I think the team will be good enough. It's just the luck of the draw in that playoff round, or hoping that Poland can become 10th, and we won't have to worry about it at all. I promised I was going to show you a fantastic player, didn't I? Here is he, Stefane Momperus. And apparently, from what chat told me, his nickname, or his name can loosely translate to the Red Mumbler. And that is the worst superhero name of all time, if I heard it correctly, which I may not have done, let's be honest. But for £4.7 million from Khan, having him and Steuer to move around in that number 10 role, with Obradovic and Jens Hjertedal behind us, oh my giddy aunt, that is a crazy set of players, but he is ridiculously good. Still only 18 as well. Which isn't like a stupid amount, but as much as you'd expect him to. So forgive me, Volleys, you'll just hear some shaking going on under the table. I've just realised that looks absolutely awful. Now even more reason to head over on stream, because we can try and find some more players like him. We're doing all the different types of scouting, transfer room in, Belgian amateurs for the last time possibly, natty caps in there too, and of course team reports finally kick off, which is going to be ace, and we've got money to spend, and I may actually spend it for once. I'm just going to be going ham on it, to be honest. And I realise this may have been quite a long video. I've been trying some more stuff out with the way that I narrate these things, and it's all kind of a bit fluid as I'm figuring out the way I want to do it, but hopefully it's been an enjoyable watch. Let me know what you think, as always. So I'll see you guys over on stream. If you get there, and you got this far into the video, whack Red Mumble in the chat and I'll know that you got to this point to actually see Stefane himself. Or Red Mumbler. What? I'll know what you mean. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful Sunday or whenever you're watching this. Hold your gun, capybara. Bye-bye. Kind of cool company that really has supported me a lot. Oh my God.